Ben, tell us, what is the K1 Fiancé Visa here in America?
The K1 visa is a visa for anybody who's engaged to be married to a U.S. citizen, but is abroad, and then they're going to get a visa to go to the U.S., get married in the U.S., and then reside in the U.S. with a green card.
I've gotten tons of questions from our audience about this, so we're going to break this down on how to prepare for this visa interview. Check it out, friends. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Chine Coaching. I'm Rob, and at Chine Coaching, we're all about helping you thrive and succeed in your cross-cultural journey, especially with the difficulties of visas, immigration, and visa interviews. And today we're going to be breaking down the K1 visa, someone who's engaged or a fiance of an American. We've got a special guest, Ben, who's going to give a lot of insight. So Ben, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, my name's Ben Ardoburn. I was a consular officer, a visa officer working in the embassies and consulates abroad around the world, doing those visa interviews, making those decisions, approving the visas, having to refuse some. Now on the outside, I help people who are applying for a visa pass their visa interview.
I love how many people you guys have guided and helped to get success in their visa interviews, get those approvals. I love seeing those success stories. And in our Chine Coaching comment section, I get lots of questions about the K1 visa. So I want to do a really good due diligence breakdown of that so people can know what they're getting into. So what would be just a couple of those tips on how people can prepare specifically for a K1 visa interview?
All right, well, the K1 is completely just relying on your relationship with an American citizen. If you're applying for a K1, the number one thing that they're thinking when you walk up and you hand them your passport and they see you're applying for a K1 visa, they're thinking, okay, is this relationship legitimate? What does legitimate mean? It means, is this relationship not just for the purposes of immigration, right? There can be a lot of reasons why people might get married, right? Love being the most, expected reason, but there's also other things, right? Well, if there's families that are involved and the families would like this, if it's an arranged marriage, if it's a love marriage, whatever inputs go in, that are cultural, that are personal, are all fine, except just for the purposes of immigration. So that's what they're looking for. Is this a real marriage? Or is it just for getting a visa?
So as they prepare, thinking about how they can communicate that and explain the relationship in a way that makes sense to an American visa officer, that's what's really important for that prep, right?
Yeah, exactly. And think about it this way. You know your relationship's real, right? You know it's real, and you would think, well, obviously anybody would also know that my relationship is real. But think about it this way. You're going to have an interview with someone who does get lied to, who does see fraudulent relationships. So they're on guard, right? They're on the lookout, trying to see, okay, of these 100 people I'm going to interview, some number of them, I don't know, we'll say five of them, 5% are going to be lying to me. Are you one of those 5%? So go in thinking that, okay, this person's skeptical because they have been lied to and they will be lied to. I need to make them at ease and let them know everything they need to know to dispel any doubt about my relationship. So that's what you can go in doing. Know how you need to present your relationship. Don't just answer those questions simply with one-word answers. Think, I need to introduce this. This person needs to know and feel that my relationship is real. The two of you won't be there together. It'll just be you. So you're going to have to, on your own, convince someone that you've got a real relationship with someone who's not present at the interview. We help our clients doing this all the time, but you need to identify what might be that hurdle. Is the hurdle that you got engaged very recently, that you just met very recently?
So it sounds like this is a great mentality to have as you're kind of thinking through and preparing. But also with preparing, what are some of the common questions that a K1 Fiancé visa applicant can expect from the visa officer?
They're going to ask how you met. They're going to ask, how did this relationship start? How were you introduced, right? When did you start dating? How did they propose? They're going to ask all these questions. And there's no right or wrong answer. There's just your honest answer. The reason they ask the question is to see, okay, from what they tell me, are they telling me the truth? Is this a real relationship? Now, some of the facts, right? If you just rely on the facts, if someone says, okay, well, when did you meet? How long have you been dating? And you just say 9 years ago, and we've been living together for 9 years. Okay, that fact without any other details is going to be pretty strong, right? 9 years, that's a very solid relationship. But what if you say 9 months? We met each other 9 months ago, and you give no more information. Well, from the American visa officer's perspective, right, because they're coming from their own cultural background, That seems like a very quick path from meeting to being engaged. You got no other info. And so they're going to start
Hmm.
thinking, well, I wonder if this is legit or if they've just concocted this for the purposes of getting a visa. So that's what you need to know. Identify what might set off an alarm for them and then address that.
That's good. And K1 is obviously engaged to an American. Is this a
Mhm.
stepping stone towards also a green card and citizenship, or what kind of happens after K1 when they get to America?
Yes, it is. Now, this is kind of technical and it really doesn't matter for you, but I will tell you the K1 is technically a non-immigrant visa,
Hmm.
but it's treated as an immigrant visa. It's interviewed in the immigrant section. All the standards for getting issued have to do with the immigrant visa standards. And once you get to the US, you will have the opportunity to convert to a green card. You should really think of it as an immigrant visa, even though technically it's categorized as non-immigrant. Now, because it's an immigrant visa, in essence, what you need to know is that one of the requirements is that you are intending to live in the US. This is not a visa just to go visit your fiance. It's not a
Hmm.
visa to go to the US, get married for a destination wedding in the US, and then return abroad where you're going to have your permanent life. You do have to intend to go to the US, get married, and then stay in the US. I've seen some people get caught up in a horrible, vicious circle of, well, they went for a B visa interview and they said, yeah, we want to go to the US and get married, then we're going to go home to Colombia. And they say, oh, no, you need a fiance visa because you're getting married in the US. And they say, okay. And
Hmm.
they apply for the K1 fiance visa. And they go in and they tell the officer, yeah, we're going to go get married. And then we're going to come home and live in Colombia. And they say, no, you're not an immigrant. You need to get a tourist visa, which
Hmm.
is frustrating
Yeah.
beyond belief, right? But it has to do with you going in and educating them because we know that could be an issue, right?
Hmm.
So for the small number of your viewers who may intend to get married in the US and then go abroad, educate the visa officer a little bit, right? Hold their
Hmm.
hand a little bit through it and say, yeah, our plan is to go to the US, get married, and then come abroad. And in our research, we found that that's not for the K visa. That's actually
Hmm.
why we're applying for a B visa instead. Right? That's if you're a fiance and you stumbled on this video, but you're not planning to be in the US. Now, for the majority of you who are going to stay in the US after you get married, make sure they know that, right? Don't say anything
Hmm.
about, oh, but we're coming back home because my parents are sick and we're going to take care of them for a while. No, if your plan is to reside in the US, you can take trips abroad, but your residence needs to be in the US.
Yeah. So they won't be getting questions about home ties or plans to return home, but more about plans to settle in America, and got to be ready to answer those kind of questions, right?
It's true. You need to cut your home
Hmm.
ties in order to get the K1 visa. You're abandoning your residence at home and you're making a new one in the US.
Okay. Good. Because yeah, it's different than a lot of the other, F1, H1B, or spouse visas that we've talked about, where you want to
Mhm.
show the officer that no, eventually I'll need to go home. This is no, I need to settle in America. So that's a
That's
good
right.
perspective shift. Ben, thanks for clarifying that. I'm learning a ton. My friends, if you're also learning a lot, hit that like button to say thanks and cheers to Ben explaining this K1 visa. And our try question to you guys is, where are you going to be giving your visa interview? Let us know. Would love to know the city, the consulate, the embassy. Where are you guys giving your visa interviews? Yeah, what's your experience there like? So yeah, tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear from our amazing audience. Next, Ben, again, K1 fiancé visas are not a guarantee. So, what are maybe a couple red flags that a visa officer might be looking for that might cause a rejection for this K1 visa interview?
Those red flags are going to be anything that would make them doubt your relationship. And keep in mind that they're going to be very suspicious. They're very
Hmm.
doubtful of everything that they're told by a visa applicant. So anything that review your story, tell it to yourself and think, what part of this story could they question and think, that doesn't seem like a solid piece of evidence, right? A short time that you've been together, right? If you've only been together, we'll say less than a year, right? They're going to consider that a relatively short amount of time to be together. You're going to need to build some more background on how it developed so quickly to being engaged to get married.
Hmm.
Maybe you've been together for a while, but it's been long distance, right? Maybe
Hmm.
since you've been together, you've only actually been together in person for a short amount of time. Then they're going to be thinking, well, how could it develop to the point where you're going to get married without having been physically in the same place? So that's something you'll need to know. Okay, I need to let them know how this developed. Okay, if you're in a place where marriage maybe is going to have the family involved more than just yourself, if it's an arranged marriage, this is something you'll also need to let them know, right? Is this a love marriage? Is this arranged marriage? Are the families on board if it's a love marriage? Whatever those details are, let them know, because you want to fill in any gaps that might cause them to think, okay, I'm going to be suspicious because I think maybe this is the relationship that's fraudulent.
Yeah, so clear communication on the legitimacy of that relationship, especially that's going to make sense in the eye of a U.S. visa officer. So it's particularly the length, duration, and connectedness of that relationship is what's really going to sell it, I would say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone out there that wants to know, the visa officers themselves coming from the U.S. right now, for visa officers, they're around the age of 25 to 35 usually. I think that, the average marriage age is around the early 30s right now. And higher the education, the later the average marriage age is in the U.S. And also courtship periods are very long. So people will have dated for 5-6 years, maybe even lived together for many years before they then get married. So they're coming from a standard that's pretty demonstrative, that shows, well, yeah, you're definitely in a relationship, right? You're on the lease of an apartment together. And then convincing them of something where it's like, we'll say a little bit more traditional. Oh yes, we've met and we've dated, and our families are on board with it. And so even though we've only met 4 or 5 times, we've decided to get married. That's something where they need more convincing to let them know that this is legit.
Yeah. So if your culture has different traditions for proposals and engagements, that's okay. Just make sure you explain it and how that works to the visa officer, so it can make sense, so that it's clear and not fishy or suspicious. And yeah, Ben, I know that, again, these aren't guaranteed. So how can you guys at Argo Visa help people to make sure they can secure a K1 visa in America?
Yeah, at Argo Visa, we're a network of former visa officers. There's 17 of us, and we worked all around the world in different countries, speaking different languages, working with all the visa types, including the K1. And we all worked on the inside doing these interviews, and now we bring that expertise to you to help you pass your interview. With the many of the visa types we work with, B1, B2s, and Fs, you can try again if you're refused. Waiting and finding that visa slot, that interview slot, is hard, but you can apply again. With the K1, though, you get one shot. You get one shot. And if they refuse that K, it's going to be years before you're able to apply again with that K. Or if you just decide to go ahead and get married, that process is much longer. Don't leave that with a chance. Don't roll the dice and think, oh, well, I'll invest in the real expert help only if I get refused. With the K, go in there and know that this is the one shot. The K visa, and let's say the spouse visa, if you're married to a U.S. citizen, like an IR1, the standard is the same in terms of what you need, which is to have a legitimate marriage to a U.S. citizen, a legitimate relationship, right? But with the K, because you're not married yet, because it's technically a non-immigrant visa officers, a little bit more discretion, right? If they're going to refuse a spouse visa, an IR1, they feel they need to have very strong evidence before they're going to put together a revocation memo and say, there is evidence that this relationship is not real. It should be the same for the K1, but in practice, they will be a little bit more willing to say, well, there's not enough evidence to support that it's real. Not, I have strong evidence that it's not real, but I don't have strong enough evidence that it is real. Kind of the absence of evidence lets them think, okay, well, I'm just going to push them. Basically, what I'm saying is they'll refuse your K visa more easily than they would an IR1 visa. So don't leave it to chance. Go in there, know that they feel a little bit more free to refuse a K1 because you're not married yet, because it's technically non-immigrant, and know that you have to go in there and convince them, right? That's your one shot.
Yeah, and if you want to kind of test that, I know on the Argo Visa website, they have a great visa checkup tool, this free chatbot where you plug in your information, answer a dozen questions or so. It actually spits out a result on the percentage likelihood of getting approved or rejected. Again, we'll have links for those, how you can do this visa checkup, see what kind of response a visa officer like Ben will give you guys. Or if you want to get help, get coaching from Argo Visa, we'll have links to help you guys with that as well. And Ben and I also made recently another great video for spouse visas. So H4, F2, and other types of spouse visas. Some amazing tips. Again, those are tricky, just like these K1s. So check out the link to see that H4 or F2 spouse visa. Lots of great info in there. And Ben, Thanks again. I learned a ton and love your experience, and thanks for helping out our community.
Thanks a lot, Rob. It's always a pleasure to speak to your audience.
Yeah, friends, make sure to connect with us online on social media like LinkedIn, Instagram, our Chai Break e-newsletter as well. Tons of great resources. I know Argo on their social media is always putting out great resources and tips. I love their Instagram page as well. Ben shares a lot of great advice there. We love having you all be part of our Chai and coaching community. Thanks for tuning in this time, and we'll see you next time. Cheers, everybody.